Hey guys, welcome to Finally Clicked, the podcast where we discuss business, leadership, and personal development. My name is Margaret Smith, and I'm the Director of Operations for Pickett Street Properties, a real estate team out of Bothell, Washington. And I'll be here every week with our owner and team leader, Jesse D. Moore. We'll be digging into concepts and ideas that have helped us both personally and professionally, and you'll also get a chance to hear from local and national experts that we know provide massive value to get to the point where it all finally clicks.
Cheers. Cheers, Margaret. Oh, God. She makes a grimace in her face.
Thank you so much. That was so lovely. That was a lovely pour.
I've learned something about ASMR.
What did you learn?
You can't try too hard.
Yes, I agree.
If you try too hard, it's not ASMR.
You can't try too hard and you can't laugh.
Like whispering, it's a whisper.
Yes.
It's not a loud whisper.
No, it's a good whisper.
It's a good, clear whisper.
Clear whisper.
If you try too hard, it's not ASMR anymore.
It's not.
That's the beauty of ASMR.
I think you need to smack your lips more.
I just overly wet my lips.
Excellent. Because that's what we need to do to make sure people understand it's ASMR.
Today's episode is brought to you by Pendleton Whiskey. And I feel like we should disclaim, we have already imbibed.
We have imbibed, and Pendleton Whiskey did not sponsor this whiskey.
No, we had to buy Pendleton like a normal human being. We had to go to a grocery store
QFC had it.
and be like, which one do we pick? Because no mother effers stood up and helped a brother out.
Are you going to tell people what you're using in the ASMR?
I call that playing with the slinky. I can never do this for very long. My patience is...
I could actually do this for a full hour. Maybe this could be a side business for me.
But then we have to get directional microphones
Yes.
to be like, I'm starting over here and ending over here. Oh, you coughed. It's over. ASMR episode.
The moment is gone.
That ASMR moment has passed. I'm sitting across from Margaret Smith. I am Jesse Moore. We are the hosts of Finally Clicked, your favorite podcast. Margaret is wearing Shamrock headband.
I am. In honor of St. Patrick's Day coming this Sunday.
Ah. To the Irish.
To the Irish.
And I am not wearing a headband of any form. Margaret,
Yes.
it's our special ASMR and whiskey episode.
I have to say, I really look forward to these episodes. There's a certain freedom to it that's just really relaxing. I don't know. It's become...
Right, we could have called it
Something
our
I look
commando
forward to.
episode. It's like, it's kind of like not wearing underwear. Going into an episode without an agenda is kind of like not wearing underwear.
I guess so.
But commando episode just doesn't have the same resonance as
No,
ASMR and whiskey.
No.
And, you know, we
I think
chose this horse.
It's become a favorite now, too, for listeners.
We've chose this horse. We have to ride it.
We've chose
how it
this
works.
horse.
Can't change names midstream. We've got to keep it going.
Okay.
I feel like we have a lot to talk about. And it's kind of all over the place.
Okay.
And I feel like we should stay business oriented at the beginning.
Uh-huh.
Because as we drink more whiskey, we can't be
Business
trusted.
goes out the door.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. So we just finished a 3-part series,
We did.
starting with
Mm-hmm. Self-awareness,
self-awareness,
authenticity, and boundaries.
And what did you think of those episodes?
I loved them. I mean, I loved the theme. I loved the sequence. I will say after the last one, I felt like I should have given another example of exactly how to setting a boundary, because I think we talked a lot about boundaries and what they do. But I talked to a few people who are like, but how exactly do I do that besides having a conversation? Because I think I brought up the fierce conversations dialogue. And so just to go back to that for a minute, since I've talked to a few people about it, as far as the how goes, you guys, it's however you want to do it. But it usually involves a conversation and setting a limit to maybe the number of times you see that person or like how much they're involved in your life. When we say boundaries, it's whatever boundary you want it to be, right? There's no like prescription for what that should look like.
Yeah.
Because it's different based on different people.
Everybody's different. And in high school, I was known as a guy with many friends and no acquaintances because that's how I prefer to relate in life. If I want to know someone, I want to know them at a deep level. I don't want to know them on a superficial level.
Yeah.
And when I create a boundary, it's generally pretty steadfast and unrelenting because if I go in, I'm all the way in. If I go out, I have to come all the way out. Like I just need some separation.
Yeah.
And I can't question. I'm the type, again, how I operate in life. I just want to be me and be authentic and not have to worry about filters or anything else. And so I just can't have people I don't trust in my personal space because I'm not going to edit.
Yeah. And then for me, the only other thing I would add about boundaries is that there's certain people that I'm always going to have in my life no matter what, because maybe they're connected to family members or they're friends that have been connected for a long time. But I do, as far as boundaries go, I will limit the amount of time I spend around them. And that all starts with a conversation. So I would say if you are not sure, think about what your physical reaction is around that person. I was listening to our episode 13 with Enmei again randomly this morning. And something she said, I think there's several people that have listened to that episode like 3 times. Avni is an admin in the area who actually shared it on Instagram the other day, which was so kind of her. And I didn't even know she was listening. She's listened to that episode 3 times. And Enmei said, as a reminder to me, the difference between instinct and intuition, when your instinct kicks in, you'll have a physical reaction. And that is absolutely what reminds me every time if I'm around somebody or if I'm trying to figure out who I should set boundaries with. I will get sick to my stomach. I'll get anxiety. I'll get some sort of feeling in my body that's not okay. And so I would say recognize that first, which is where we talked about self-awareness, and then think about how is that impacting how authentic you're being, and then have the conversation or don't have the conversation if it's not someone that you are that close with. So setting the boundaries, guys, is kind of up to however you want to do it. There's not a perfect way to do it. Yeah. The fact is most people don't do it because they're too scared to. So if there's anything I could say to you is there's been a lot of conversations I've had over the last month where as I'm driving to that person's house or I'm trying to get up the courage to call that person, I say to myself, you know what? The one thing I can guarantee is that I'm probably the only person having this conversation today out of many people that need to. Because the fact is most people don't have those hard conversations. So you just force yourself to do it. And by the time you do it, you realize nobody's great at it. You just have to do it out of respect, I think, for yourself, first and foremost.
Yeah, well, we always imagine a fate worse.
Oh, the worst of the
reality,
worst of the
right?
worst. Yeah.
And so we're always pleasantly surprised when reality is better than our imagination.
And I have to say, like, the feeling that I get afterwards, the immense amount of relief I have that is enough now that I remember what that feels like to do it. So thanks for going back to that. I just had to go back to that, tie that bow, because that came up with a couple people.
I'm happy to tie that bow.
I know you are.
Speaking of tying bows.
What other bow are we tying right now?
You came to work today with a headache.
I did a migraine, yeah.
Migraine.
Yeah.
And so you took some medicine. You had some whiskey. I don't think you're supposed to do that, but
it's okay as long as I'm not driving.
Okay. How are you feeling right now?
I feel so much better because when I have a migraine, it impacts my entire life. It's really draining and painful.
And you're ready to do an hour podcast?
I'll do a podcast and I'll keep going tonight till about 11 o'clock per usual.
Per usual?
Per usual, because I got to pack for Reno, so.
Oh, yeah. Margaret's going to Reno. She's going to go interface with our friends, some real estate peers.
Yeah.
Tell them how operations can greatly impact their business. Talk about the podcast. How has the podcast changed your class?
Oh, one of the biggest ways is that it's actually something I give out for homework now prior to class. And I tell them in an email after they've registered, I tell them, if you want to get the biggest return on your investment for this class, listen to episodes 3 and 13. Because if they come somewhat prepared, they don't have to know us that well, but if they listen to those 2 episodes, they'll get a good idea of how you and I work together, and they'll actually be able to come with questions. I love people that come prepared. If I'm meeting someone for lunch about, maybe they want to ask me about how I hire or what I do, or if they come to my class, if they don't come having some sort of an idea of who I am, they're not going to get the best return on their investment. So I send the podcast out to them prior to class, and then talking about the content in the class is, this last class was the first example of that, and I'm just super excited to see what these next couple classes are like, because they come in having heard Enmay, and then having heard you and I talk about communication, they're already have an idea of how it works, so we can go that much deeper in class. It's been hugely helpful, actually.
I think the last month has been interesting because of schedule and seasonality and other things. You and I actually haven't had a lot of time to interface.
No,
over
outside
the
of the
last
podcast.
4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Where literally this is the only time.
I've actually thought about it quite a bit.
Oh?
Since we've started the podcast, we've probably had more conversations than we normally would have, because it's forced us to sit down and we want to record, so it has to happen. And we end up talking about everything anyways, like as we would.
I don't know. I think we were better before 4 weeks ago about meeting separately and talking through some things. And for whatever reason, we haven't had that luxury in the last 4 weeks.
It's been really busy.
And so this is our time to talk and everything. So
you guys get the pleasure of hearing literally everything, because this is.
I know. Actually, I remember now that I was going to talk to you about something before we got on the podcast.
Perfect. Spring it on me. Spring it on me.
Run it by you. But now I'm just going
to. Oh, and can we do a quick reminder, just because we had a lunch with someone today who said, oh my gosh, I've been meaning to write a review for you guys. So I just want to say thank you guys to those of you that have written reviews. And I know there's a bunch of you that are listening that haven't yet written one. I have to tell you, like, reviews are kind of everything for the podcast world. So if you have thought about it at all, please do it today, because for future guests that we want to bring on, it actually really does matter. So I wanted to say that at the beginning here, because I really appreciate it.
I wish we could play DMX's Stop, Drop, Going On, Open Up, Shop, Whoa.
Oh, I haven't heard that song in a long time.
Yeah, I kind of butchered it, but
that was good.
That was running through my head as you were talking about asking people to hear reviews, to give a review. So if you hear DMX today, I'm going to encourage you to write a review, because that's the universe telling you
that's our trigger.
That DMX has reached out from
from the beyond
to remind you to write a review. I love watching Margaret drink whiskey.
I have to say, I hope these guys sponsor us, because Pendleton is the way to go. The first couple tastes are a bit sharp, but after that, just settle in like a warm blankie. Good.
You take a drink and then you shake your head like you're drinking antifreeze.
Well, it helps me take it down.
You know what helps is the ice cubes, because as they melt,
I know you say that.
That water opens up the whiskey. It gives it a new brightness that you wouldn't have without it.
Why don't people put ice cubes in wine?
Well, because
some people do.
It's a different alcohol.
Yeah.
In Italy, in Europe, they often chill red wine, which I think is a travesty.
That's interesting.
It is interesting.
Because I don't like red cold at all, actually.
But also in Europe, they don't have as much access to refrigeration and ice cubes, and so I think it's a luxury for them a little bit that the red wine is, because it's so hot out. Maybe they sell more wine, red wine, if it's colder.
I only like rosé and white cold.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Maybe that makes me a wine snob.
But I mean, you're becoming a whiskey drinker now.
I am. Affirmative. That's right. Affirmative.
So today we're drinking Pendleton. Mm-hmm. And, I feel like we should talk about it for a second. I think people should know I like Pendleton myself. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is Canadian. There's a knock against it for that reason. Just kidding. Okay. Canadians. Much love. Hugs.
Our friends across the border.
No, but whiskey generally, to me, it has the finish on a whiskey generally falls into 2 categories. One is like a smoky finish, and that's like 90% of whiskeys.
What about the one you had at lunch today? That was not smoky.
Oh, man. Well, that was a cask.
Okay, that's what you were explaining
whiskey.
that. Yeah.
And so this is Pendleton and some others have more of a vanilla finish, a little smoother finish, which I like in a whiskey.
No, it's so funny. I try to tag you on Facebook whenever I see this, but now when whiskey comes up, people are tagging us in certain posts around whiskey.
Just whatever.
So as someone who's a beginner whiskey drinker, this girl on Facebook, I think it's Wendy Woods. Wendy Woods, I think it is. What would you suggest for a beginner who is not yet, can't really get into whiskey?
Yeah, that's
because Dana Browning, from our friend who just won the T-shirt, she won our Fan of the Week T-shirt in Boise. She suggested that she just said you haven't tried the right one yet. So find the brand that you like.
No, you have to try whiskey for I had to try it for 10 years before.
10 years?
And then automatic, it's an acquired taste, and it really is because you have to try it in certain. You just have to keep trying it.
I agree. I mean, I had it whiskey
and
Coke
eventually
for a long time.
It tastes like laundry soap until one day you taste it and you're like, wow, I get it.
That's true.
And nothing happened to me. I didn't get hit in the head or anything like that. One day I tasted whiskey and it tasted good.
Yeah, I'm a fan now of Pendleton's. I think that's my number one. Woodinville whiskey was great too.
Woodinville whiskey's good.
And I'll do Jack Daniels, but
they could do more in the podcast realm. They could sponsor.
I mean, they could do more. They could take a step into that realm.
Some luminaries.
Yeah.
Take a chance.
Mm-hmm. Take a chance on me.
Oh, now you're doing a Jesse thing. Take a chance. Take a chance.
I couldn't help myself. Yeah.
All right.
I'm glad we covered that.
We also cover pop culture in these episodes.
We do.
And we have a few documentaries, a few TV shows to discuss. And so I'm just going to do a spoiler alert right now. We're going to talk about Heal, which is a documentary on Netflix about the power of the mind. We're going to talk about Free Solo, which is a documentary from National Geographic about climbing. We're going to talk about, I want to talk possibly about R. Kelly and Michael Jackson and their documentary series, Surviving R. Kelly and Leaving Neverland.
Oh, I heard part of a podcast on that.
And as much as I hate to talk about this or admit it, we may talk about The Bachelor. And I hate the fact that it seems antithetical that I would drink whiskey and talk about The Bachelor because these two don't belong in the same world. Now, I'm embarrassed, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, but I am embarrassed to talk about The Bachelor because my fiance loves reality TV, and I love her, and I care less about my TV when I'm with her. So to be around her, I'll watch programming that I find obnoxious.
Can you say that perhaps you might learn something?
No, I don't learn. I learn how much I want to
always an opportunity to learn.
Insulate myself from the world and these vapid vultures that are out there. Where do we start? Let's start with Heal because you've mentioned it before.
Okay.
And we've asked people to watch it if they want, to be familiar. And I have a huge problem with this documentary. Do you have a problem with this documentary?
Bring it. I don't necessarily have a problem, no, but
There's a huge flaw.
When you talk to me, I have very few problems. I only have opportunities. So,
do I believe
Spoken
like a true motivational speaker.
Do I believe every piece of this documentary? No. But what I always believe is that I can find something in anything to learn. And this documentary provided me with an opportunity to learn more about what I already believe, which is our thinking impacts the cells in our body.
Confirmation bias.
Yes, which impacts
you
our
heard
healing.
them regurgitate ideas and belief systems you already found to be true.
I heard new things. And I also compared it to Tony Robbins' documentary called Guru.
I'm not your guru.
I'm not your guru. No, so you have to understand, I watched this documentary from the perspective of a girl whose mom has cancer. And so I'm always thinking about alternative ways to heal. And my mom absolutely has anxiety and stress issues, which the doctor has told her to limit as much as possible because it does impact the growth. And so that's my perspective. Absolutely.
I obviously believe in the power of the mind. You can't.
I mean, you've had an actual example.
I have.
I mean, God, can we talk about that?
Sure.
Oh, shit. Excuse me.
ASMR. Transition. Let's go back to Jesse's childhood.
Okay. This is phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Going back in time. That's Huey Lewis, for anyone wondering. All right, so the year is 1988.
Oh, this is so exciting.
Jesse
like a story time.
Dylan Moore is 11 years old.
God.
I went to the optometrist in Miles City, Montana.
Did they even have optometrists there at the time?
Well, there's two. One was like the old guard, like he saw your grandpa and your mom and the siblings and the cousins, and he knew, like...
It's like my dream.
It's funny. It's like doctors in small towns are also like the
Like counselors?
genealogists.
Oh, genealogists.
Like,
yeah.
they're like, I worked on your grandpa's teeth, and then I worked on your mom's teeth. My mom has a great story about that I probably can't share because it's about her gynecologist, but it's a good story. It's related. It's in the same vein.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, essentially, you always have the old guy who's always had everybody's business, and then the new guy who's trying to stir things up.
Yeah.
And so we went to the new guy, and I've always had issues. As a kid, I had issues with my eyes. And
like what kind of issues?
I just feel like I went to the optometrist a lot. For somebody who didn't have glasses, my mom was really good about making sure I went often. And one time I went...
Which is kind of surprising to me that you did.
One time I went to the optometrist, and he got really kind of quiet and nervous, and he left the room. And he brought my mom in, and he showed her what he was seeing. And essentially what he saw was the onset of childhood glaucoma. And so whatever he saw in examining me was degenerative. And anything that's degenerative you can't cure it, So like glaucoma, if you get glaucoma, it doesn't get better. You can try to freeze it in its state where it doesn't get worse. The end result is blindness. And so childhood glaucoma is super bad because you get it as a child and you're blind before you leave adolescence.
Jeez.
So I was 10 or 11, and I was being told that I would be blind by the time I was 16.
Side note, have you been watching American Idol?
I mean, that's random.
Because I know with your kids, you've watched that occasionally. So
No, I don't watch American Idol.
Oh, I thought you did.
I haven't watched it since Kelly Clarkson was on
So
it.
one of the contestants had exactly that, and she's blind. She went blind at 17, I believe it was. She's not completely, but she's almost basically completely blind.
Right.
I didn't realize that happened before you leave adolescence then.
Yeah, so here I am, 10, 11, being told that I might go blind by the time I'm 16.
God.
And my parents flew me to California, and I saw some specialists down there that basically confirmed the diagnosis. And my parents were hippies turned born-again Christians, which is a whole new level of clickbait. Like, hippies turned born-again Christians. Like, and some things they brought with them and some things they left behind. And my point of it is they put me on a special diet. I ate more cabbage of it, and then I never want to see cabbage again.
Cabbage is so interesting.
I just had to eat cabbage like crazy. And my parents, being Protestant Christians, prayed over me. And after seeing specialists in California and after the special diet, I went back into my optometrist, and my degenerative medical condition had cured itself. I went from having, like, with this diagnosis, you'd have, how it's 20/20 vision?
Mm-hmm.
It would be like 15, 150. So the pressure in one eye is way off compared to the other eye. When I went in, now my vision is 15/15. I have better than perfect.
Ridiculous.
I have better than perfect vision. Like I'm 42 years old. I've never had glasses. I can see signs from a long distance away.
Yeah.
I can see crazy stuff. And I don't know what to say. The specialist didn't get it wrong.
No.
It's a degenerative disease. They'd seen it before. They told us to prepare me for being blind. I don't know if it was a special diet or the prayers or the mindset.
How long was that time between when they diagnosed you and then when it became apparent it was gone?
It was less than a year.
Wow.
I want to say 6 to 12 months.
So it's not like the diet had that much time to impact you. Because I know there's certain diets that, like my mom had for the kids that she worked with that had seizures and things like that would help subside the symptoms. But for it to be less than 12 months is kind of...
Right. So I've talked on here about the placebo effect, the nocebo effect. I believe in the power of the mind. There's just no doubt in my mind that you can heal yourself if you want to. And this documentary is about the power of the mind to heal your body in pretty powerful ways. Here's my problem. They use somebody as an example. She has severe hives, break out all over her body.
Yeah.
They're gross and painful.
Yeah.
And she's tried everything. And so they use this as like a foil for the documentary. Like, let's follow her through. Let's give her some homeopathic, naturopathic remedies. Let's use the power of the mind against this and see what happens. And there's no payoff. She doesn't get better. Her symptoms don't lessen. They keep trying and nothing. They just end it without saying that she's better or that anything worked or that it's worse.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's like the Flat Earth documentary. There's a Flat Earth documentary out there that kind of disproves the fact that our Earth is flat. And that's pretty amazing to me. And I just think that documentaries have a problem currently. And it's a good problem to have. And what I mean by that is if you were a documentarian 10 years ago, it's not that easy to find work. Like, it's a passion project. You're not making a lot of money, right? And you hope you hit it big with something that somebody wants to see. And hopefully you get nominated for an Oscar and somebody sees your film for that reason. Yeah. Well, with Netflix and on-demand viewing, documentaries are now a much bigger thing.
It's true, yeah.
And my concern is that they're gonna flame out if we aren't critical of them, and we don't say, hey, we demand better. Yeah. In this case, I want to say, hey, you could have done better here.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I don't understand your message if you're saying, hey, let's try the power of the mind on this patient, and it doesn't work. It's ineffective. That doesn't seem. I wouldn't put that I wouldn't say, "Hey, I can sell $3 million houses," and then I shoot a documentary about how I try to sell this house and I don't do it. Yeah, yeah. Then that doesn't support my claim. Yeah. And so, I was really befuddled at the end of that movie that so much time was spent on this character, and then they just kind of
I would agree with that.
Zoomed past her at the end.
Totally.
The major character for their side was this woman in Topanga, California, who was healed from stage 4 cancer.
Yeah, that was the biggest one.
Right. But we didn't get to see that happen. Yeah. And so we don't know. That's the hard part, is people can make all sorts of claims, and you don't know why it got better. Yeah. You don't know if it was their diet. You don't know, right? Unless you kind of follow them and track this stuff.
I was trying to read up before the podcast, and I didn't have enough time to totally read up on the background behind the producer and why she decided, did she not, because you're right. You think she would have tied a bow on the end of that and showed what happened. So why didn't she?
I just found a way to tie all these documentaries together. All the things we're going to talk about, except for The Bachelor. Okay. F The Bachelor for a second. Okay. No, so that woman in the documentary, it came out that she had a very traumatic childhood, extremely traumatic.
Yes.
Like at 9, she was waking her mom up and getting her dressed, getting her fed to go out to work. She had a very challenging childhood, and obviously that manifested. It was manifesting in her body in pretty terrible ways, and so. To me, I would have treated that, right? I would have treated the childhood trauma.
I think that's what they were kind of getting at, right?
Well,
with the EFT stuff.
Is that the sound thing?
The tapping.
Oh, the tapping.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we've talked about that on some past podcasts a little bit.
So and here's the thing with Heal, and this is why I think it's worth talking about. I love Steve Jobs. I cried a tiny bit when I found out Steve Jobs died. Yeah. Because I think he's a revolutionary. Yeah. I think we get a generation like him. And, when he was diagnosed with cancer and he chose a non-clinician remedy, right? He chose to do a naturopathic remedy. And that was his biggest regret as he died, was that he didn't try harder. He didn't do chemo. He didn't do Western medicine. He wanted to go naturopathic. He did a lot of juicing. He did a lot of stuff like that. And, end result, he's not with us anymore. So that's my challenge. I guess that's my concern with documentaries like this. I know the Western medicine system is flawed. I get that. It's also, there's some brilliant minds in there.
Yeah, you reminded me of, remember that part in the documentary where one of the guys said they're not knocking Western medicine. They're saying Western medicine for things like surgeries, things like that you physically can't do with naturopathic remedies. They absolutely believe in combining some of that for sure. Right. Yeah.
And so, but I think there's some responsibility there, right? Where you're saying, hey, yes, the mind is powerful, but if you don't know how to throttle it, you don't know how to use the mind in the proper way, you could just end up dead.
Well, yeah. And that's why, that's interesting. Now that I'm drawing connections across other things that we've talked about. Sometimes the best way to attack life in general is to combine all these different things that you learn. So all the different options, not just one way. It's about combining everything, all the techniques that you learn.
No, life is a holistic experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We take everything we've ever learned.
Yeah.
And we apply it.
That's the most powerful
thing. And we combine it and mix it and filter it and
Yeah.
Life is a holistic experience. ASMR. And then how I would tie it to the other, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on these two documentaries because I think it's dark and morbid and tragic, and we're drinking, so we don't want to go too far down this path. But
down the money hole.
If we talk, I'm not gonna answer that. Did you say the money hole?
No, the bunny hole.
Oh.
Bunny.
That's what I thought, but then I thought you switched it up with money hole. So you didn't see Surviving R. Kelly?
No, but what's so funny that you say that is randomly I was listening to some of the podcasts on Oprah's Soul Sunday, and I just started on this one around Green Lake the other day, talking about the Neverland.
Was it a Neverland one? Yeah.
And I was like, oh, should I listen to this? Oh, Margaret, I'm already in 5 minutes. Yep, listening to it. It was intense.
So this is what I was going to talk to you about beforehand, but I guess we're talking about it now. So I was sexually abused when I was young, and Margaret just raised her eyebrows at me.
We're going there.
And it had a pretty dramatic effect on me in my childhood, certainly. And it had a dramatic effect on me until I was mid-30s and beyond, to be honest.
It's a lifelong thing.
I didn't get any help. I didn't have any resources to help me with it until about 35 years old. And I'm somehow drawn to these documentaries in a way of just processing and wanting to learn and kind of compare to my own experiences. So I watched Surviving R. Kelly. I think this was a couple weeks ago. I even mentioned it to you. That you had mentioned, Aaron, a friend of mine had mentioned a documentary to me. Not a documentary, a movie called Spotlight. I think that's the one. And that's a movie about how a Boston paper uncovered the Catholic Church's cover-up of sexual abuse. And I watched Surviving R. Kelly, and I watched Spotlight in the same weekend.
Oh, my gosh.
And I was spiraling.
Probably not a prescription
hard.
that I would suggest for many.
No, I was spiraling hard into darkness. And I realized that was too much. And now I try to throw in some comedy.
Yeah, there you go. That's when you throw on a session of The Friends or
and then
Bambi or something.
Yeah, that's why I watched The Bachelor. I watched The Bachelor to get over
it's good
the
relief.
messed up stuff I watch otherwise.
Yeah.
So R. Kelly and the tragedy. Here's the thing. And then we don't have to talk about it because you haven't seen it. But I'll just say this. In the documentary, it comes out that R. Kelly was sexually abused by his sister. That essentially from the age of 7 to 14, he was forced into sexual situations with a sister. And I know from my own experience, I know from counseling and therapy and lots of stories like this that, most abusers were abused at some point. So R. Kelly, while it's easy to demonize him, and I think I can think of a lot of punishments for him that would be adequate. The reality is I have some empathy because of the trauma he went through. And when you go through a trauma like that at a young age, it fundamentally changes how your brain works.
Like they say, 0 to 7. It's like the most formative years.
And he was hypersexualized at a young age. So as your brain is building, it's building blocks. And then if you just throw in some blocks in there that are hypersexualized, it changes how your brain's going to work the rest of your life. And I'm not excusing his behavior in any way, shape, or form. I think he's a horrendous person. And I have empathy for him for having been traumatized. In what I've seen I was watching Leaving Neverland, which is about Michael Jackson and the claims of two boys in particular who spent a lot of time with him and the abuse that they suffered. And as one of them was talking last night, I kind of had an aha moment because he had a very successful career. He won a dance contest. Like, if you can dance like Michael Jackson, enter this contest. And he competed against adults, and he won it. And he was 7 years old, and he won it. And that put him in the limelight with Michael Jackson. And so then Michael took him on tour and had him stay at his house and all this stuff. And he's looking back at this guy is looking back at his experience, and he's talking about it as an adult. Eventually, he became a choreographer, worked with Britney Spears. He's an amazing, successful adult. And with all the success, he woke up one day and realized because of this trauma, he didn't know who he was. And I'm like, amen, brother. I got you. I get it. And we've talked about it, and I just want to give people a small window into my life and my soul. And that's what happened to me, where I woke up. I was successful at mid-30s, and I didn't know who I was. And I was unhappy, and I was miserable, and I was suicidal. I was in a dark place, and no one would have guessed that from the outside appearances. And so like the separation, divorce, everything's kind of wound up together and related to each other in some way. And when I heard him say that, like, I needed to hear that. And I didn't need to hear it now. I needed to hear it, 6 years ago. But him saying, like, I had everything. I was successful. I had a trade. I had a vocation. I had a wife. I had a kid. Yeah. Everything was great.
Well, you can still function. You can still function even when you're not healthy, but only to a certain point.
But imagine being, and that's what I think is hard for people to understand, is that how lost you can feel if you don't know who you are.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if it was the same guy. So the part of the podcast, I only listened to the first hour. There's more of it. So I don't know which of the gentlemen it was that was speaking. But he said he said it's hard to explain because you don't even know it's wrong until you get to a certain point. And for him, it was he heard someone else, whoever came out about it first, he heard that guy talk about it, and he was like, oh, maybe I can be brave enough to do that. And that was his first inkling that maybe it wasn't okay.
Well, not just that, but they also had boys. They had sons. And then when they reached that age...
he said when he had a kid, that was what hit him.
He had a kid, and he saw that kid at 7.
And he said, that's a vulnerable human.
He realized how vulnerable that kid was, and that's who he was.
That was huge,
And so it's so funny because the way they tell this story in Leaving Neverland, they interview everybody separately. And as you listen to the parents, you can't tell if they know the ending or not.
Oh.
Like, they're talking about, they have all this love and affection for Michael Jackson and how everything's going to be fine. You don't get a sense of, like, the other shoe dropping, which is really bizarre to watch. Like, do you understand? You put your son in peril?
Yeah.
Like, extreme
some
peril?
Just don't get it. Yeah.
And so I still need to watch, like, the last part.
I have to watch it now.
But I just...
the other thing Oprah said that you just reminded me of was she's done over 200, I think she said 217 shows about sexual abuse. And what she's tried to explain in those shows, she said this guy did in that documentary in 4 hours. And she called him up and she was like, what you've been saying or what you said in this movie is what I've been trying to say for years.
Is that about the grooming part or about what?
I think it was more about describing exactly, it's not, people have the wrong definition of abuse. Like they think the abuse, they think immediately physical, they think the rape,
Right.
they think, and it's all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's what intrigued me is it was, I'm going to have to watch it now to see.
I have so many thinking errors in my head that were instilled at a young age that were wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And that's it's like the aftershock of abuse is then
the PTSD,
all this ideology that came along with it that what doesn't seem abusive, but changes who I am fundamentally. It changes what I believed and changes how I interact with the world. It changes everything.
Totally.
And so
is it broken up into two pieces then?
yeah, there's two parts. I think there's a third. The third part is Oprah interviewing the two
Okay, I'll have to watch
boys,
it then.
two men. And
Yeah, that was a lot for one weekend.
don't watch
Don't
Spotlight
recommend that.
and Surviving R. Kelly and Leaving Neverland in the same weekend.
Yeah. But you know what? I think it's super brave of you to talk about it because I have to say, I mean, I don't know what the percentage is now, but there's so many people in my life that have dealt with stuff like that they'll totally identify with it.
Well, and I could be wrong, but the stat I hear often is it's 25%. Like 1 in 4, female and male,
They've seen higher than that.
has been
From what I've heard before,
sexually
I've heard
abused
3
or
out of 5.
assaulted.
3 out of 5 female friends, and for me, that's true, 100%. Yeah, which is hard to like conceptualize.
Yeah, and I don't want to out anyone in my family or anything that happened, but I mean, it's crazy the impact of sexual abuse in my family is extremely high. And it's not related to my parents. I don't want anyone to guess or do anything like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you know anybody who works in social services, it's a constant. It's a constant, and it's rampant.
All right, so ASMR transition out of sexual abuse.
How about we go to Free Solo?
Oh, Free Solo. Yeah. Man alive. That movie kicked me right in the heart.
If you guys haven't seen it, go. I don't even know if it's still out right now.
All right, so if you have Xfinity in your little speaker button, just say Free Solo. And it's free from National Geographic right now. And so I'd highly just try to find it. It's so great. And business people will love this movie.
They agree.
Because it's about following a passion to an extreme degree.
Yeah.
I mean, seeing this, and so Free Solo is Free Solo is a term in mountain climbing where you climb without a rope.
Ridiculous.
So you're climbing using only your hands and feet and body parts to keep you alive.
Yeah.
And this gentleman climbs El Capitan, the face of.
Which I knew nothing about before because I'm not.
But if you've bought a Mac in the last 5 years, you've seen El Capitan.
True.
You've seen it's a picture of that mountain in Yosemite Park with the bald face on it.
Yeah.
And he climbs that 3,000 feet
Insane.
without a rope.
And the thing
No one's ever done it.
And
I don't think anyone's ever attempted it before.
No. Yeah, well, I don't know if people have attempted it. Obviously they've either died or they haven't gone further. But there's actually like what I found most interesting because I know nothing about this sport is the path that he had. Each path, part of the mountain had a name.
Yeah. Well, his buddy named like 6 of those. Oh my God. So there's another documentary. I'm not going to remember the name of it. But his friend, there's a friend that joins him and helps him and maps out certain things.
Yeah, I remember that guy.
That guy, what they don't tell you, that guy is like a world-class climber. Those two are the top 2 climbers in the world.
Wow. And
the friend, his mission after what happened? Oh, it's a compelling story. So find you know what? I'm gonna look it up real quick because people are gonna wonder, and I don't.
Yeah, this is the hotel that I'm staying at this weekend in Reno is called the Whitney Peak, and there's a rock climbing wall along the outside of one of the walls of the hotel. So maybe if I'm feeling super gutsy, I'll climb it this weekend. Probably not going to happen though. Most likely not going to happen. Like probably 150% not going to happen.
All right. It is called the Dawn Wall. There's another documentary called the Dawn Wall, And in that, what's pretty crazy, this is the friend that helps out the guy in Free Solo. And he tells his story about meeting his first love, and they go to some crazy country in Russia over there in the Eastern Bloc to go climbing, and they get abducted. They get kidnapped by guerrilla militia, and he ends up having to kill somebody to save everybody. This climber ends up he has a moment in time where he can push this guy off a mountain and they're safe, right? Oh my God. But he has to do it. He has to make a momentary decision, and he decides to kill this guy so they can be safe. That would be hard. And it kind of messes him up. Yeah. And so when he gets back, he goes to El Capitan, and he's like, you know what? To sort out everything in my life and in my mind, I'm going to find out every route possible to climb this thing. And he does. He finds like 13 different routes up the mountain. Wow. And so what's funny is when you watch Free Solo, the routes they're talking about, his buddy found all these routes. That's crazy. Okay. Basically. Okay.
Because each foothold has a name, not each foothold.
Well, each part, each section,
pieces.
Right?
It's insane.
Yeah, like the Karate Kick.
I mean, each time I didn't cry, but I sweated.
I know. I don't know.
My entire way
I'm weird as F, by the way, because I cried like a baby.
No, I don't think it's weird, actually. I think you just identify with a different part of the movie, which makes total sense to me.
Well,
than I did.
You know what makes me emotional? Like, if you want me to cry, let me watch somebody where someone fulfills their dreams. Yeah. And I will cry like a baby.
Well, I think you actually shed a tear or two, speaking of that, at Sarah's bodybuilding show.
I did.
Yeah.
No, I said I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
And it's because I was seeing the moment when she was going to realize her dreams. Yeah. And when that, for me, is my guitar string is tuned to that setting. Because when someone plucks that string, man alive, there's nothing better. I don't. So the voice, forget it. I can't watch The Voice because I cry. And I cry because someone's like, I had to quit. Well, my mom got sick. Ma got sick, so I had to quit singing and go work at Dairy Queen. And now I just sing when I can. You know, and then they get a 4-chair turn on The Voice, and Jesse's crying like a baby. Yeah. Oh, gosh. But Free Solo really got to me, and it got to me for a few. And so here's some fascinating things about this documentary. Something's wrong with this guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, they actually scanned his brain.
Right. Something's wrong with this guy, and they say he's a little off.
Well, we could say wrong, or we could say right.
We need to get this on YouTube because people aren't going to see what you just did with your face to make that. All right.
But there's a whole part that's not actually
right. So they scan his brain. They give an MRI. They study his brain. And the part of his brain that amygdala.
Yeah, that has emotions and has feelings.
Yeah, like basically when dramatic things happen, it barely flickers in his mind.
It's like they said something like it takes a lot more for that part
to stimulate
it. So he's going for extreme sports like this. It makes sense. Right. Meanwhile, he has this girlfriend who's like
darling,
super cute
from Seattle,
and from Seattle, and all over, loving him, in love with him, wanting him to succeed and do what he dreams, but at the same time saying like, hey, I'd really like it if you didn't die. Like, I'd really like it if you came back.
Even more than that, because of his relationship with her, he got injured.
Yeah, I felt
she was not as experienced of a climber as he was. They were climbing together. Because of an error she made, he injured his back, which could affect his whole career.
His whole life.
And he's like, I'm mad at you, and I'm probably going to break up with you.
Yeah. At that time, I have to say, I was kind of like, F it, leave him. Like, seriously? But you can't deny it if you're going to date someone like that.
But here's the main reason I want you guys to watch this movie. I want you to show me I'm not wrong. Watch the film crew, watch the emotion of all. These are his closest friends, all of his closest friends, to film this movie. Yeah. These are not YouTubers that are paid to film this movie. They had to hire climbers to shoot this movie because there's no way to get this footage.
No regular person would do that.
No way.
I would not be up there.
These are his friends, his closest peers, filming him.
Talking before each climb, if this could happen, he could fall.
No, there's a better than even chance that he'll die.
Yeah.
There's a chance he'll climb the mountain. There's a better chance he won't.
Yeah.
And they're like saying, and we have to film it. Like at any given moment, I can watch my friend plunge to his death.
Yeah.
And there are times where they can't watch the camera and they're not watching him climb.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like all that emotion, I feel all that emotion.
Yeah.
So kudos to the videographer because I felt every
Everything.
emotion everybody felt.
Yeah.
And same with the emotion of the climber for achieving that dream and that goal.
It was insane.
But I say watch it with kids.
Did you watch it at home?
I watched it by myself.
Okay, I watched it at the IMAX, which was like you were in his shoulder as he was. That's why I was sweating profusely.
I'm pretty sure I can say I've never watched a documentary in the theaters. That's amazing.
It was
to me.
amazing.
That you went to IMAX. Did you walk into the wrong theater? How did you?
No, I went on purpose with my friend Julie.
You went to the
Julie picked out the movie. Julie Yost.
Mr. Rogers. You watched that one in the theater.
I love Mr. Rogers in the theater. That was epic. 431, 143, 143. Means love. That's his number.
I love you is what it means.
That's his number. I love you. That was how much he weighed consistently for a long time.
Do you know why it means I love you?
It's in numbers. 4 letters, love.
Okay, just checking.
Hello, I'm with it. Epic movie along with Winnie the Pooh. I'm right there with all those movies. God.
If you're going to start talking about Winnie the Pooh, we have to end the movie part. Because people aren't going to take us seriously. Anyway, Free Solo.
Excellent film. Mm-hmm. All right. Did you want to graze The Bachelor or do we just...
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, I don't know what happens. You're going to have to be filling me in.
All right. I think I need to talk about this so I can just get it off my chest.
I think get it off your chest, yeah.
I hate this show. And let me explain.
And it's been going on how many years now?
I don't know.
Like 30.
You know how long I've been aware of it? As long as I've dated Jill.
Oh, it's been much longer than that.
Well, I know that. She always goes, remember so-and-so? I'm like, was that before I met you? Because then, no, I don't have any idea. But the premise is so ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
So let's just examine this for a minute. You're going to go on a reality TV show where they put you in a mansion in L.A. For so many weeks. They're going to take you on amazing dates. Wait, 30, how many women? 30?
30 women, 1 man.
30
or one
women.
Woman, 30 men.
And let's look at the composition of what type of female applies for this. By the way, so there's 30 women. They have to be pretty much less than 29 years old.
Yeah.
I think there's a cutoff.
Yeah.
And I think it's around 28. If you're 28 year old on this show, okay?
Yeah.
So most of these girls are 23 to 26 years old.
Yeah.
And somehow the only thing they're missing in life is a husband. And it's like commission breath. We've talked about commission breath, where an agent who needs a paycheck, they have commission breath. You can smell it from a mile away. This is how every woman is on this show. So where they're damaged, honey. They're damaged. Something has happened to them, and I am sorry for them. I have empathy for them. But don't go on TV and share it with the world because you are damaged.
Yeah.
And so they go and they fall in love with this guy. They spend 0 time with him. So it's all fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
They go on dates he could never afford with a helicopter and bungees.
In Thailand.
And Michelin star dinners and everything else. And they go to exotic destinations like Portugal and Saigon and Thailand and Vietnam. Like, most people don't travel to these places before they get married.
Ever.
Right?
Yeah,
no, they're going to exotic locations. The wind's blowing. There's helicopters and there's camera crews. And
they have amazing dresses to wear. And
oh, my gosh. So, okay, so from the start, this show is fundamentally flawed.
Yeah.
So it's a game show to meet the most important person in your life.
Yeah. And it's scripted.
It's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
So, and then on top of it, this time he's a virgin, which parents be warned. Like, let's talk. Like, I guess we're gonna talk to our kids about this now, because Chris Harrison doesn't. Chris Harrison never misses an opportunity to remind you that he's a virgin. And will he? Did he lose his virginity?
The whole line.
Or is he forever going to be a virgin? I was like, he said that last night. He's like, did he lose his virginity? Or is he forever going to be a virgin? I'm like, he's 26 years old and he used to play in the NFL. I think he can get trim whenever he wants. Like, if you know what I mean? Like, I don't think he's going to forever be a virgin. So there's that. They always throw in some super crazy chick.
Oh, yeah.
To write. Yeah. Like the producer's pick.
Yeah.
and it's so-and-so, and she's crazy, and all the girls hate her, and then there's a cat fight.
No, there's absolutely a casting call for sure. They select a cast very carefully based on personalities. There's got to be at least 3 crazy ones.
And you know what? I realize I can talk about what I hate about the show and everything about it, about the season, without even giving away spoilers, I think.
Yeah.
But Colton is a little boy. He's a 12-year-old boy. Yeah. He's a tiny little boy who doesn't know how to do anything.
So I've been thinking about applying myself.
He doesn't know how to woo a woman. He doesn't know how to be a man. He doesn't know when to be manly and when to be a boy. Like he doesn't know the back and forth. Yeah. He's like he has one button and it's cute smile, and he wears it when he's about to break up with someone or when he likes someone, and it's just so boring to me. So in this, and I will say this because there's drama, right? He gets down to the final 3 hometowns. Yeah. Right? I think fantasy suite. Final 3.
I saw part
fantasy
of that.
suite.
Yeah.
He's virgin.
Yeah.
The last time he was on the show.
First night didn't go so well.
The first time he was on the show, he was a Bachelorette contestant, right? So he's one of the 30 guys. And he's asking Chris Harrison, golly gee, Chris, what happens in the fantasy suite? Give me the rundown. Can you break it down for me? What happens? And it's this oh shucks thing that is just, come on, man, you're smarter than this. So he never goes to the fantasy suite the first season. This season, he's got the opportunity to take 3 women to the fantasy suites. First one, Taisha. Nothing happens. They just talk. Great for them. Good for you. Whatever's good.
She didn't look happy the next day.
Oh, no, she did not. And you know what? I can't even say it. Like, that boy lost out. She's a winner in a lot of ways.
Amazing.
Mindset, everything. She's awesome. And it was super awkward when they interviewed her and him the next day and afterward, because he's like, again, he's 12-year-old boy. He's like, thanks for the conversation.
She's very mature.
That next session opened up with thanks for the conversation. And me and my fiance were like, what? That's over. That's done. Stick a fork in it. That relationship is done. Next girl he takes, Cassie, breaks up with him.
He loves her. He's
breaks up with him.
Into her.
And she's like, well, I don't know if I can get there. And I just don't know. Like, it's so hard with this show and like all the other women. And I just don't know if I can get there. And he's devastated. And that's when you find out that this man loves this girl. Yeah. And you didn't really know until that moment.
No clue. They didn't show it at all.
And then I'm kind of like, what are you doing? Why are you reacting this way to this drip of a woman who's obviously not into you? Like, just move. So then there's this other girl, Hannah B. She just disappears from the show for 3 hours. We don't know what happened to her because Colton has to jump a gate. Yeah. They got to show that 18 million times.
So many times.
Which, by the way, he is a gazelle. He jumped a 9-foot gate in half a second in a pea coat and jeans.
There you go.
Are you kidding me?
That was very eloquent. Yeah.
They just need to have him do athletic stuff.
Just run down the beach.
Right.
I'm good with that. Yeah, that was pretty funny. I forgot Hannah B did just disappear for like the whole 3 hours.
Right. She's gone. We don't know where she's at. I think she's abducted in Portugal. I'm afraid they don't want to bring her up because she's still being held.
That's the one I think my roommate's vying for because she went to Alabama too. Yeah, we've watched it together a couple times. So, but it's done and over.
So last night was the finale.
Oh my gosh, tell us.
You want to know?
Yes.
Okay, turn your volume down if you don't want to hear this. But
okay.
He goes back to her and Cassie. And says, I broke up with the other 2 girls. The show's over. I only want to be with you. And no pressure. We don't have to get engaged anytime soon. Let's just take it day by day. Right? Mm-hmm. And so he has this weird affect now because he's in love, where he has this quiet confidence, where he's like, his dad's like, how do you know? And he's like, I just know. And his dad's like, really? Because she doesn't seem that into you. And he's like, I have to do this, Dad. I have to do this. I just know.
What did she say?
Well, she basically says, I'm not that into you.
Yeah.
I'm not there. I'm not where you're at. You're a step ahead of me, basically. And then they go visit his family in Spain, and he has to tell them, I dumped these other chicks. I went after her, and she's not quite at where I'm at. Like, she's a little bit behind me.
Oh my God.
And they're like, this sounds terrible. And so then she has to talk. Then she almost breaks up with him again before she meets the family because she's so anxious about meeting the family, which I get.
Yeah.
Hey, hi, can I meet you for the first time? Then can we talk about how I'm not that into your son?
Not going to do it. That's too bad. Wow.
Apparently.
Maybe it'll be one of those situations where he ends up dropping her and goes back to one of the other girls.
No, so now they're together.
They are.
They're happily in love. She did this weird affect where she was rubbing lipstick off his face. Like, oh, it's so cute. I got lipstick on you. And but like my grandma does that. I don't want anyone. It's not cute. Like, it was such a weird staged thing where it's like, oh, and we're so happy. And
Maybe they asked her to do that so that they could pay her some money.
This is all I want to say. Colton is a little tiny boy. And if this is what women aspire to, I'm so worried. I'm worried for both genders. I'm worried for men and women because this is what we put on a pedestal. What?
I hope that most people that watch the show, but I know it's not true. I hope that most people understand this is scripted.
Oh my gosh.
It's a farce. It's not real life. I would hope most people know that. It's great entertainment though, right? Because you can escape the real world for a little while. But so far,
you know what? My real world's better than that show. No, this show.
You know what? I think people are going on the show now, and I think about it, I forgot about this, to promote themselves personally. So if I were to go on the show, I would just do nothing but talk about real estate in Pickett Street. Because some people go on there and they play the guitar and they like sing a song, and all of a sudden they get hired by some.
That's called The Voice or American Idol.
No, people do that on The Bachelor and Bachelorette. Not as much anymore. They must have cut them off, but they were like promoting and getting on Days of Our Lives, things like that.
I don't know. I don't think I'd watch the show. I mean, I like watching it because it's so infuriating. Mm-hmm. I like picking it apart. Yeah.
Dan and I, my roommate Dan and I do. We just analyze everybody. What do you think they're thinking right now? What do you think? Why do you think they're that way? Yeah. Well, I'm proud of you for going there. We talked about it. We did it. We covered it.
Talking about Bachelor.
We talked about the Bachelor.
I know. I'm sorry, everybody.
That's okay. It's all right.
I'm sorry. I aspire to be better than that. ASMR. Transition.
ASMR.
I'm opening the ASMR box.
We have an official ASMR
Listen
box.
for a second. Conk.
That was loud.
Now I'm opening up.
What are you going to pull out now? Oh, yeah. Try that.
I want to open it.
I've wanted to try that.
Mother effer. How do you open this? Margaret, I don't know how to open this. Oh, damn it. I just broke a fork. I can't open this for real.
You got to open it from that side.
One side.
From the opposite side of what you think. I figured that out right before. These things are called Sprint. Soda can. Fizzy candy. This is the lemon lime flavor.
It's kind of like Pop Rocks.
That's what I want to get. I want to find Pop Rocks. I haven't found the Pop Rocks yet.
You know what's overrated? Candy. Do you like candy?
I mean, I like M&Ms.
You're happy all the way through.
All the way through.
Like if I got you a bag of M&Ms, You eat it in one sitting from the first to the last? Or do you twist it up, put it aside for a little bit?
I would put it aside for a little bit.
Right, this is
Back
my
in the
point.
old day, I would do it all the way through.
But it's not candy. It's like you need a little tiny bit of it.
Yeah, no, not as much anymore. And it's probably more out of self-discipline than anything else.
And oddly enough, all you can ever find is the jumbo size of anything.
Yes. Well,
They're
they want you to eat more and more and more. They do. Just like that's the whole reason behind the shopping cart size, actually, is to fill your basket with more. You want to go into the psychology of grocery stores.
Are you just making stuff up now?
I'm actually not. That's actually a fact.
Where'd that come
Based
from?
on research.
What
research that I did in grad school, actually.
Wow.
I want to go way back. Not that far back, but a little bit
So
back.
part of getting your social worker degree was to measure the size of shopping carts and understand the impact it had on the consumer base?
Well, it's all about the influence of the government and people, government and corporations on people. Ooh. That's an interesting one.
Oh. That's probably why it's there.
That was perfect.
Oddly satisfying. Well, we finished the 3-part series. We've done our ASMR and whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be transitioning into a few interview episodes coming up.
Oh, we are. That's right.
Next week.
I forgot that's already happening, actually.
Everybody.
Our buddy.
Tyler, Gary Vaynerchuk's assistant, will be with us.
Mm-hmm.
Not live. But thankfully, thanks to digital innovations over the past few decades, we'll be able to talk to him as if he were in our studio.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about the Pacific Northwest Admin Retreat coming up, his feature appearance, what it's like to be Gary V's assistant. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be pretty epic. I think some of the girls have been doing some research on him to see what they can find out before he attends the retreat. And he talks quite a bit about motivation and drive and how he came to get the job with Gary V. And so I think he's going to be a super interesting guest. Yeah.
And
we have him next week. And then after that, Mr. Gary John Bishop.
Gary John
himself,
Bishop,
the week after
author
that.
of Unbleep Yourself.
Unbleep yourself. Unbleep it.
So we have a couple good, episodes that are going to take preparation and sobriety. And I think our interview episodes are pretty awesome, to be honest.
I think they've been really good.
In fact, I think if we were going to recall one guest for another appearance, who do you think it would be?
Another guest for another appearance?
One of our interview guests for another appearance. I think the people want it.
I think the people want it. Who are you thinking of?
Enmei.
Oh, epic Enmei. Absolutely. People would love to have her again. At least 5 to 6, I think at least 5 people that I know of for sure reached out to her for an appointment after that episode. Several people, like I said earlier, have listened to it multiple times. I think people would freak out if we had her again. Yeah. 100%.
So I think
I'm really looking forward to having her at the retreat because we're going to have her for like 6 hours. And who knows what's coming out of that? Who knows? But I thought she was so, I was like, you would have thought we rehearsed it or something. You always do a great job at guiding the conversation. You and I both have great questions. She was so poised, had such good content to offer. It's a great idea.
She should be in voiceover acting too.
Yeah.
She could be any character on any children's show.
Absolutely, 100%. She's so cute. Her little giggle. She has a giggle. She does. She's so happy. It's contagious, for sure. She lives in her joy. That's a great idea. Maybe we should do it post-retreat. A couple months later.
Or pre. I think we're going to have her back. I think she's going to be regular on our
That would be
podcast.
epic. Like a quarterly Enmei. Yeah. Just a taste. Delicious.
Well, life beckons.
Has it already been an
We
hour?
start this episode and every episode must end.
God, it flies by. This was a great one. We covered the gamut. You went deeper than I knew we were going.
We talked about
and then we went right
glaucoma.
back up to The Bachelor, which is a good way to end it.
We would love to hear your comments about anything we talked about, or
Absolutely.
your thoughts on the things we talked about. If you have an opinion on a documentary or The Bachelor or anything at all, please do engage with us. I think we have the best, we enjoy this the most when our audience interacts with us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The sharing on Instagram stories, Facebook, we appreciate all of it, and it just makes it that much more fun. Yeah.
And I know week after week, it's a challenge for me because I like to be on it every week. I like to create great content. I know there's going to be weeks where it's not, it might be subpar, but...
Are you kidding? We have not
yet
been subpar.
I don't know. The boundaries one,
we just wrapped that bow up at the beginning. I feel good about it now.
Well, we didn't do it in the episode, though. I mean, it was good. I'm not saying that. But, hey, we have our things. Like last week, when we recorded, I was in a dark place. Yeah, I was in bad things were happening, and I didn't want to talk about it.
It was a weird day.
It was a super weird day.
Yeah.
And it affects me.
Yeah. But you know what I like about it, though, and what I know people like about it, is that we talk about that, the fact that it was.
Yeah, well, I didn't do it that day.
No, that's right.
Because I don't always want to be that transparent.
No, we don't always have to. But I do agree with you. No, I know what you mean. There's some days. The funny thing is that's probably the first episode that's been published where we felt that way. Because otherwise, that one random one that was not great didn't even get published. Didn't record.
Yeah.
I feel like we've just been it's a good groove. I feel like we're in a groove. This is now our 21st episode. That's crazy. 20 episodes in. That is consistency. God, I love being consistent.
You do love it.
I love it so much.
Reno, look out for Margaret. By the time this...
Look out, Reno.
You'll be in Reno when this airs. When
Probably,
it's available.
Or I'll be on my way to the airport, yeah.
So if you're
I'm coming. I'm so amped up right now, too. When I get emotional, and it all comes out in the class, it's like, watch out.
So look out, Reno.
Look out.
Margaret's on the way. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day.
We're ending this now.